Hey, Tim Doria here, founder of Videoquant AI and ex-head of television data science at TripAdvisor, where we were spending over $100 million per year across the globe. My team was responsible for measuring and optimizing every single one of those $100 million. Today, I want to talk to you about a common mistake that I see brands both large and small making with their television campaigns. It's one of those things that you don't see in literature, you don't see people talking about, but folks kind of intuitively sense that there's something amiss, that there is an opportunity, but you just don't see it written about. By the way, if you enjoy this channel, subscribe to it today, right now, in fact, because it helps us to improve the quality of our content and give you new tips, advice, tricks on how to improve the engagement and ROI that you're seeing with your television commercials and video assets. So first, let's start by looking at, for a typical television campaign, what accounts for most of the costs. And I've broken it into two groups. We have the creative, which is the audio-visual content. This is what people are actually seeing when you run a television commercial. And then you have the media, which is the ad inventory. It's the networks, the day parts, the programs, the CBSs, NBCs, the places where your ads are going to be shown. It's who owns the audiences. And what we see here is that for a typical US national television campaign, and by the way, the numbers vary from one brand to another, but it isn't uncommon to see about 95% of costs being expended on the media side, meaning getting the ad inventory, the places where your ad is going to show, and about 5% on the creative costs, the actual cost of building and developing the video asset. Now, counterintuitively, let's now look to see, based on analysis, what is driving most of the outcomes, the performance outcomes, the ROI, whether or not it worked when we look at these two segments. And what we find is counterintuitively, it's swapped. The creative, the audiovisual content is actually accounting for most of the ROI that we're seeing with television commercials, while the media only accounts for about 20% of that. Now, in the early days of a new campaign, when you're just starting out and you don't really know what you're doing, what media to buy, you're going to find that the media does have a large impact on your outcomes, meaning that there's a lot of things you could optimize in terms of what your price points are, how much you're paying for different inventory, which networks you're leaning into, which programming you're leaning into. So there is an opportunity for optimization there. But what you're going to quickly find as you start maturing, or if you're working with an agency that knows what they're doing, is that you're going to kind of plateau out on your ability to optimize media. Eventually, you're going to figure out what are the right programs, what are the right networks, what are the right day parts, what are the right audiences to show my content to. And then at that point, you could modify a little to the left, a little to the right, but you're not going to see really big changes in your ROI and your engagement and the results that you're seeing from your campaign. Versus the creative, the proverbial horse in the race. With the creative, it doesn't matter how far into the campaign you are. If you come up with a good new idea, you could suddenly elevate the ROI for every single one of the media dollars you're spending. So while 95% of the cost is on the media side, it's the creative that can actually control and titrate how effective or ineffective the media dollars are. One good creative and all of your media dollars works harder. One poor creative, or creative that just overall hasn't been effective, or like creative that really just was never well tested, it puts a friction, puts a headwind on every single one of your media dollars. And this is something that most brands do not realize when they get into this. Most CFOs will look and say, all right, my biggest cost center is media. And so they're going to put oversized attention on the optimization of the media side. They're going to take their best data scientists, their best business analysts, their best quants, and put them behind trying to optimize and squeeze more dollars out of every media dollar spent. But the thing is that those media ROIs are all founded and conditioned on the creative performance. And so counterintuitively, even though creative counts for such a minor percentage of the overall spend for typical large size campaigns, most of the data science resources, most of the quant that needs to happen to optimize the overall campaign should be happening on the creative side. And this does not happen in most brands that I talk to. Most brands fall into that trap where they focus on the media, but not on the creative. So how can we solve this problem? How can we make our overall campaign more effective? Well, we need to start focusing where the biggest ROI is. The biggest ROI is with the horse in the race, Think of the creative as the horse, think of the media as the jockey. If you have a three-legged horse, doesn't matter how good the jockey is, doesn't matter how many data scientists, how many quants, how many business analysts you have on the jockey side. If you're racing a three-legged horse, you could have the most pent-up, souped-up jockey out there, and you're going to lose the race. The goal here is to win the race. So in order to do that, you need to focus on the horse. You have to focus on the horse first, in fact. Make sure that your creative is as effective as possible. Make sure that you're not leaving dollars on the table or opportunities unturned. And that means doing a good amount of quantitative work. We're not talking about traditional surveys, focus groups, panel studies. While those are helpful in many regards, they're really not that, they don't really correlate all that well with real world engagement. If you read Malcolm Gladwell's book Blink, you'll know why. In fact, there was an interesting video, I think we have it posted in the FAQs on our site, where we could look at one of the focus groups that was run for the famous 1984 Apple campaign, where it completely blew it. They basically predicted that the best television commercial of all times was going to be ineffective. And clearly that wasn't the case. And so even though those are common tools, they're often not predictive of what's going to work with creative. And that's why we suggest doing real world experiments. I'll do a separate video on how you can reduce the cost of your real world experiments. And how you could test and increase the bandwidth, increase the number of tests and data that you're getting without blowing your budgets, because that's a common problem you're going to run into. But the key insight here that you need to realize is that even though media is where most of the cost is, creative is what's driving the end result for the most part. And so when it comes time to figure out where to put your analysis investment, you should be thinking about the creative. Hope you've enjoyed. Again, subscribe to this channel. Be sure to look for our other videos. We do reviews of content and commercials and give tips and tricks for how to optimize ROI in all sorts of different ways. So stay tuned until next time. And I'm Tim Doria, founder of Videoquant. Take it easy.